Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us today for the National Learning Community. Our topic today is Regional Site Visits, a review. My name is BC Echohawk. I'm a communication coordinator with the Native Connections TTA Center. And joining me today is going to be Bobby Arthur and Deborah Radler, two of our grantee technical assistants. Blaine, if you could go to the next slide. Next slide. So our SAMHSA team welcomes you, both the SAMHSA leadership and our Native Connections team. Next slide. Next slide, please. So a little note on housekeeping. We would really like to know who's joining us today. If you could go and put your full name in the participant list, we'd really appreciate it. All you do is find your name on the participants list, hover over it. There will be an option of more. When you click more, you could choose rename and you could put your grantee name in there. Your phone lines will be muted during the webinar, but we will have, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to enter them in the chat and we'll have a question and answer session later. Next slide, please. So to open us up in a good way today, our GTA Bobby Arthur is going to do that for us.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I am Bobby Arthur, and I am really happy and pleased and honored to be able to open us up in a good way here today. So I'm going to say a little prayer and get us started in a good way. And I know we all have our own thoughts and our own ways of prayer and being reverent. So I just wanted to respect your ways, and if you could just allow me to set us off in a good way with a prayer. So Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you blessed us with. We thank you for each and every one of us that is here at this time. We thank you for the air that you gave us this day to allow us to have another day and experience another day of life. Father, we thank you for the simple pleasures of being able to smell, hear, touch, feel, and to experience those things. Heavenly Father, we thank you for those things. As we gather here today, Heavenly Father, I ask that you be with each and every one of us and be with the facilitators here as they go through the presentations and help them to find the words and the mindset to needed as they carry their messages of hope and to our grantees and those that are listening. Father, let us carry good messages and let everybody walks away from our presentation that they feel good about things. Bless everyone who's here, their families and their relations and their relatives, Heavenly Father. Those that are well or those that might be needing prayer, Heavenly Father, we ask that you hear them and take care of those things at this time. Again, we thank you for everyone that's here today, and I ask special blessings for those that carry out the work that they do in helping their communities and their loved ones, their people. We come to this space and this place. Sometimes we give, and sometimes it's hard on us we might feel empty or like we don't have anything to give, but I ask that you replenish us. Everyone who's in this meeting at this time, I ask those special blessings. And we again just ask for you help us to find the words and good meanings as everyone gathers here today. So I thank you for this time, Father God. Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute to just kind of restate what the purpose of the National Learning Communities are. You know, we started the National Learning Communities right after COVID started, and we had wanted to provide a safe place for grantees to share your program adaptations or your modifications and how you respond to the pandemic. And so I think we've continued with the NLCs because, you know, with the number of grantees that we have, we're always learning something new from all of you. And so as you continue adapting your program and doing modifications, maybe now back into, one-on-one, in-person activities, we're just going to continue with our NLCs and continue talking about, the innovations that we're going to be doing. So thank you for being here today. Next slide. And today, I'd like to start off on this slide here just by introducing myself. My name is Deborah Radler. I'm a Grovant from North Central Montana. I've been a Native Connections GTA since cohort 1, and so been around for a little while. And so I'll hand this over to Bobby.
Hi, again, good morning. So I had introduced myself previously, my clan, but I am Salt Clan, and I'm born for the Tango people. My maternal grandfathers are the Water Flows Together, and my paternal grandfather is the Hopi tribe, the Bear Clan. And I'm originally from the New Mexico side of the Navajo Nation, and I am a grantee technical assistant with Native Connections. And I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. So again, my name is BC Echohawk. I'm a member of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma and a descendant of the Oto and Iowa tribes, also in Oklahoma. I am a communication coordinator, and I hope some of you have been on our webinars that we've done or listened to our podcast, and we really appreciate you joining us today. I'm in a unique situation today of co-hosting with my colleagues here, and we really want to share this information that we were all privileged to attend and hear during the regional site visits. So thank you for joining us. Next slide.
So today's, we're going to be looking at, our objectives of the day are going to be, you're going to have some information shared with you in regards to we had 3 regional site visits this season. And so we're going to share some information on each one of those regional site visits. We also want to encourage grantees to share program successes with peers at future RSVs. The other objective is to learn from grantees suggestions for future RSV topics. We want to continue to be able to provide information that is needed by you and your communities. So we really, really welcome you to be able to come in and maybe put in the chat if you hear something, or maybe it might trigger something in your mind of something that you want to know more of, more information on. And so we really want to be able to open that and invite you to let us know if you have any suggestions for other topics for RSVs. But today we're just going to basically look at the RSVs and give a brief overview on what the RSVs were about and what took place.
One of the things about, these regional site visits is that we did 3 of them this year. And we started the grantee technical assistants in our teams. We started planning these, way back in January, because it takes a while to get these, up and off the ground, especially when you're doing this all virtually. That's how all the planning was done. But, the Pacific Northwest regional site visit, that took place May 10th through the 11th in Portland, Oregon. And then the Southwest Regional Site Visit, that was June 7th and 8th. And that one was originally planned to be I think we were going to do it down in Albuquerque or Santa Fe. But I guess June is the go-to month. If you want to do a wedding, go to New Mexico, because everything was booked. So we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it in New Mexico. So we we ended up moving it to Denver, which worked out really good anyway. So that one was on June 7th and 8th. And then our third regional site visit, that was in the Great Lakes Northern Plains, and that one was just a couple of weeks ago, the first part of July, the 5th and 6th. And so each of these were 2 full days of meeting in person, but we also made sure that we could attend virtually, because there was a lot of grantees still had travel restrictions and they possibly could not attend in person. And so we wanted to make sure that this was inclusive of everybody. And so we did have Zoom numbers available every day. And so, our participant numbers were really good. I think for each of the events, we had an average of 45 to 50 participants, and that was both in person and virtually. And so, they were really well attended. Each of the regional site visits was based on the GONA format. The first morning was belonging, the first afternoon was mastery, the second morning was interdependence, and then the second afternoon was generosity. And so each of the site visits was, based on that format, but each of the events was totally different because all the grantees that attended were different. So it was a really good way to really structure these regional site visits. I think one of the highlight from each of the site visits was the poster board stories. And I think these just took off, and it was almost like they created a life of their own. Each grantee that was in attendance did take the time to construct a poster board. And you can see the one here, and these were all totally different. But each of the grantees was able to get up there for 10 minutes and really share what their programs were doing. You can see a lot of these poster boards had a lot of photographs, a lot of information about, the different activities that they were doing, the youth activities, the community meetings, their EBT, the evidence-based trainings that they did. So they were really full of information. And I think the poster boards and the stories were probably, from my guess, they were probably the most popular part of each of the RSVs. They were just so personable for each of that grantee. One of the things that I really liked about it is that as the grantees were sharing, what they were doing, they provided their emails and they provided their phone numbers, and they really invited all the grantees to contact them if maybe they did an activity that caught your attention, or it was something that you might wanted to try. They were really forthcoming with their information so that you could reach out to them and, get more information. Maybe something that you heard or seen would work in your community. But one of the main things that we wanted to do with each of these events, whether you were virtual or in person, was to give you the opportunity to network with your peers. And we've seen that happening every day through each of these regional site visits. We provided a lot of time to just have breakfast with each other, to have coffee. We mixed you up. GONA style is having everybody, sit in a large circle. And we did that deliberately because we wanted people to get up and to move around and to meet somebody maybe you've never met before. We did a lot of icebreakers, to get people up and moving around. And again, that was the purpose, was to get you up talking to each other so that you might have came in your small groups, with each grantee group, but by the time you left, you were friends with everybody. You knew who was there. You had a chance to visit with them and to talk to them. And then with all that great information that was shared on those poster boards, just so much information was provided. So I think each of the RSVs was so successful, in the opportunities that you were given to really network with each other. So I can see with the poll that we have up here, it looks like, Pacific Northwest, the Southwest, and the Great Lakes, the attendance was pretty much, like I said, was pretty much really similar. Most of it was from about 45 to 50, virtual and on-site. So thank you for taking the minute to do the poll. Next slide, please. The Pacific Northwest Regional Site Visit is one of the ones that I did attend. It was on May 10th to the 11th. And, we did invite 30 grantees, from all the tribes in Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. And so out of that 30, we had, might be 30 grantees, but we still had almost 49 people that participated both virtually and in person. So I think we had some great attendance numbers there. We had 9 grantees that did present at the Pacific Northwest. Jackie from Native American Development Center in Billings, Montana, she did a really nice presentation about the Young Women's Conference that they put on last year and that they were going to do again this year. And one of the things that really struck me about Jackie's presentation was that she talked about how in Billings, Montana is just a smaller, medium-sized city on the east side of Montana. But yet she was able to mobilize over 30 community organizations to help her come together and put on that young women's conference, for the young women in her area there, which was totally successful. In fact, it was so successful that one of the organizations in Billings pledged to help her this year. They pledged, I think, $5,000. I could be wrong on that amount, but I think that's about what it was, to keep that young women's conference going. And they also added a young man's conference this year. So Jackie really gave us a great presentation. Mary Bigbow from up in Rocky Boy, she talked about one of the, they did a survival camp during the winter. It was actually in mid-spring when they did their survival camp. But, for grantees that are up in the Northwest, up along the High Line up there, in Alaska, how brutal the winters can be up there. And you don't ever want to be caught out in a whiteout. But one of the things that Mary and her team did is that they took the time to show their participants how to make a fire without using matches. How do you make a fire in a snowstorm or when it's really cold out, so that you can make your own fire. How to do it, they really put forward some survival skills for them, so that if adverse weather or whatever happens, that at least they would have some skills to fall back on when they needed them. So the presentations that were presented there were just amazing, and they were just so full of information. Each of these RSVs was recorded, and so you can talk to your GTA about getting a copy of that recording. And one of the things that I do is I skip forward, till I get to the presentation I want to listen to, and then I listen to it and I skip forward a little bit more to the next one. But another thing I wanted to say about the regional site visits is that on the first morning, belonging, one of the things that each of the regional site visits did do was a grand entry, to where we lined all of the participants up. And this included GTAs and staff, our drummers, whoever was there, everybody lined up, and they were all in that grand entry where we brought everybody in. And so that, I think everybody participated in that, and in each one of those. And they were just really a lot of fun to, one of the fun activities that we did do while we were there. Each of the RSVs had a number of icebreakers that we did. You were helped, we wanted you to get up and move around, and really give you the opportunity to meet somebody that maybe you didn't know when you were, when you got there, you didn't know them. By the time you left, you did. So anyway, all of these 9 presentations that were presented at the Pacific Northwest were just really full of information. And again, talk to your GTA about getting the recording so that you can, really revisit those and really get some details. And maybe you want to contact those grantees and find out more about the activities that they presented. The next slide, please. Okay. The Seattle Indian Health Board, this is another presentation that happened at the Northwest. And I think BC is, here we go. Okay, we have a short insert here we wanted to play for you.
It is called the Kitchen Table Talk. And so the Kitchen Table Talk was introduced last year with adults, and the vision is to just have a kitchen table talk and talk about things that are concerning them, particularly around COVID, and talking about that and opening that conversation between families or parents or youth and our parents of the youth. And so we decided to take that framework because it went really well, and kind of let it kind of focus on youth. And these 2 kitchen table talks that we did, or the series we started, is fairly new. We did our first one at the end of March, and then our second one at the end of April. And they're all youth-led. So part of, our youth-led projects are by our interns. And so we started a youth internship program last year. And so this year we'll be entering our second. And right now we're currently hiring for potential youth intern candidates. And we also pulled some youth from our KEYS Council, which is our youth council at the Seattle Indian Health Board. And KEYS means Stand Up in Lashutsi. And it was actually named from our youth programming team prior to when we got there.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then right into the next one, we have 2 more clips to show.
Okay.
Had her practice with them. Yeah.
So I was just wondering if some of the youth from my village would be able to attend these table talks.
Yeah, so we're definitely looking to collaborate, not only internally, we try to get like our behavioral specialists to do a table talk with us, but it was just a busy time. And so we are looking to collaborate with other organizations just to give youth that platform to really put their voice out there and like how they're feeling. I know when I was a youth, I always felt like, oh yeah, you can like go and say what you want to say and we'll listen, but there was never any movement forward. So
Yeah, and yeah, I'll give you my contact and we can do that soon. But that's one of our ultimate goals, is to hopefully outreach and do a lot of these collaborations across UIOs across the nation, which would be great, especially that urban community where it's always, there's so many different variations and opinions. Was there a question back here?
I just want to say that I love the idea, because a lot of young adult or a lot of kids don't want to speak anywhere, where there are adults, and they just can speak freely when they're in that kind of a setting.
Definitely our number one intention. Okay, we'll go ahead and play the next. So this next kitchen table.
One more clip for us.
And also today, I'd like to acknowledge what is and always will be Coast Salish land, which touches the shared waters of the Duwamish, Skagit, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Swinomish, Lummi, Sequalum, Skokomish, Squaxin, Sequamish, Puyallup, Muckleshoot, and Nisqually peoples. And we manifest a future guided by Indigenous knowledge and excellence. And so I think we can start off with our first question that we have tonight. And this just can be like an open question, you know, don't feel like if someone else is like said what, you know, you're already thinking, you know, don't feel like, oh God, I need to think of something else, you know, totally open-ended, you know, anyone can hop in. So the first question is, how do you personally define wellness?
I just wanted to say I thought it was funny because we all just went, like, how do we define this? I think I would personally define it, I don't know, because it can be a lot of different ways, like physically, emotionally, spiritually, like all of those. But maybe I guess just taking care of yourself in ways that benefit you, whether that be like through working out or like getting your schoolwork done or just showering, brushing your teeth, anything that makes you feel like you're taking care of yourself. And then, yeah, that's all I have to say.
I fully agree with all that. Typically what we see in the media or things that are pushed onto us for the definition of wellness tends to revolve primarily around physical well-being, and then probably secondarily around mental and emotional well-being, and then rarely do we see spiritual well-being. And the fact of the matter is that all of these are very much tied together. Community well-being is extremely tied into individual well-being. They're interconnected and you can't separate them. So what I find as a student, I run track and field for my college, for my university, Western Washington, and spiritually, is that when I'm doing well in one of these areas, the other ones tend to follow. They're all kind of connected. So if I feel like I'm doing very well spiritually, chances are I'll be doing very well with my athletic performance and with my grades as well. They're not really separable. So when you prioritize your community, you're also prioritizing yourself.
y'all be taking all the words out of my mouth. I'll be honest. Like, that's all the things I was gonna say. But yeah, mostly mentally. Like for me, it's like mentally, physically, and spiritually. Like all those three, it's like a really good trifecta. So yeah, like my like spiritual thing is usually like maybe an hour, 30 minutes of meditation each day, and mentally is like self checkup and stuff. Yeah.
I'm like, can we describe wellness as a part of like being poor versus having money? Because a part of like this wellness being super like fixated on it recently during the pandemic, like if you want to participate in the wellness trends, you're usually having to pay in. Like, and if you can't pay in, you have to go to your community. And if you can't go to a community, how are you supposed to be well? Like, that's what I'm thinking right now.
Mhm.
For sure, you know, a lot of like the wellness kind of cultural things that, you know, we see just pushed on us in our media and everything are like, you know, this will make your life better, but you got to spend money for it.
Yeah, and I kind of think that kind of what I think it was Eric Anthony, like a lot of these ideas of having to like pay in often relate to just like this Western idea of what well-being is and how a lot of it for like marginalized folks isn't always feasible. And so I think it's important like just checking in with yourself, whether that be like with yourself through your community members, how like you can cultivate a sense of well-being through like the people you know.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Blaine, for bringing those up for us. But you know, there's more to that panel. If you would like to see the whole presentation, please get hold of your GTA to get a link to that to that Pacific Northwest RSV. And the rest of that table talk was really interesting. They went over some other topics, and as you can see, there was a lot of interaction there. So at this time, I think I'm going to turn it over to Bobby to move on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. You know, the RSVs a whole provided a whole lot of information, and it was depending on as far as like with the Southwest regional site visits, we had both a combination of rural communities and urban communities, and so it really gave the grantees a chance to compare and to share different ideas um, in both areas, and seeing if to share learned experiences. And so that was one of the things that was really awesome about the Southwest. We did have oh gosh, we had a whole lot of poster sessions when we did ours in Denver. And there was some great programs that were featured on the poster sessions. Each one gave the highlights and the spotlights of what they were doing within their programs. And then there was some that had shared some of the struggles and what they were experiencing and what some of their barriers were, and then the solutions that followed some of those challenges. So there was a lot of good information on that, and a lot of networking that was established from that. There was also we had some very awesome presenters, and I know that you know for time wise, I know maybe at some point, like I strongly suggest, like what Deborah had said, to reach out to your GPOs and seeing if we can get the recordings of it. But there was some really awesome presentations. We had various programs that shared in regards to all focusing around suicide prevention and substance use in their communities. Again, being able to distinguish in versus rural and urban settings. We did have just a highlight. We did have someone from programs who talked about the urban settings such as like Tucson Indian Center, who shared about what they do with their youth and their community and how they're bringing culture back and how they're really trying to implement and teach some of the ways of like harvesting certain things at certain times of the year, and how to prepare those items as for meals. So they're bringing a lot of their culture back. We also had someone come in and talk about, again, there was networking. We had another urban setting from Denver who shared information about um, the struggles they were having as far as getting youth involvement, and how they found the solutions to do that, and while partnering by partnering up with the school systems in the Denver area. Um, then we had another presenter from Five Sandoval Indian Pueblo, who gave a really good presentation and offered the grantees the opportunity to do activities while doing her presentation. She talked about evaluation and culture, and how to, she gave some really good points on how to streamline those two and how to bring them together to get a really good culturally, a cultural type evaluation for the communities. And she talked about, the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Um, and she had she had the grantees or the participants break off in groups and to actually use some of these ways to uh, to obtain data, and then how to evaluate that data from the group sessions. It was really really interesting, and then how to use that information along with their community readiness assessment, and how to implement those things in a staff. That was very informative. We then had presenters from, we had a discussion topic about COVID. Um, we wanted to know, and we had a panel from, we had a representative from the Fort Defiance, a grantee from Fort Defiance, Arizona, and then we also had one from Five Sandoval Indian Pueblos, and they talked about how COVID impacted their communities, and they shared um, the hardships and the challenges that brought on, and how some of the communities are still trying to heal from a lot of that, with the amount of losses they had experienced, and how they're finding ways to heal their communities. And that opened the kind of a door to for grantees to express themselves, because a lot of our grantees that were in attendance hadn't really had the opportunity to process and to feel and to actually talk about what had happened. So that kind of, we did some self-care in that, and it was it was a really a great and an eye-opening thing for everybody who participated, that self-care is so important when we're doing the work that we're doing, in replenishing a lot of that energy that we put out there a lot of times. And that was a really awesome discussion. We then had presenters. Actually, a lot of our presenters and our grantees that were in attendance also included digital stories. That was one of our topics that are in Denver. And we had different people present different digital stories that they did in their communities. And we also had um, um, one in particular who was a presenter who shared his information um, on COVID, and how he and their community used digital stories to implement some of their culture teachings in the process of healing. It was a very impactful and very interesting spin, and on how you can use digital stories as a tool to bring information out to help communities heal. It was we also, again, everybody shared. It was unexpected, but we had a lot of grantees who came forward like I had mentioned, they shared all their stories as far as in a digital format and how they went about their reasons of how they developed it, how they came across to have to or to want to create a digital story. Um, and you'll probably, I think that's one of the follow-ups that we'll have in a few minutes about um, how that had happened. Um, but it was an awesome. It was a very interactive experience. There was at the end we ended our day just like what Pacific Northwest did with a networking. On day two, we had the networking collaboration where our groups had set up in different groups where they were able to talk about and interact and actually um, share information, contact information on the second day. And I think that was something that I know that the grantees had mentioned, and that we want to put that on the list too, is just to have more information on or set more time aside for actually networking. So it was a really awesome experience, and I was really happy to be a part of it and to share that with our grantees. Deborah?
Hey, I just wanted to just mention one other presentation at the Southwest RSV that was really impressive to me. Veronica Sanchez from the 5 Sandoval Indian Pueblos, she presented virtually on evaluation and culture. And she really did an interesting presentation because she really talked about the difference between qualitative and quantitative evaluation methods and the participation, I can't say that word, participatory research. There you go. But I really liked that presentation that she did. We invited her to the Pacific Northwest regional site visit to talk to the Pacific Northwest grantees, because I thought that was such a impactful presentation. But anyway, she also did concept mapping, which goes right along with evaluation. And anyway, I just wanted to mention her as one of the really a really solid presentation that was done virtually. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. We can go to the next. BC.
Thank you, Bobby. So one of the things that you might have noted on the previous slide is that we took some time to do some one-on-one interviews that I conducted with grantees. We did both simple audio, but also later added video. But one that really stuck out to me, and I'd like to share a bit of it with you right now, was from Thorough Community Center. And I know I don't say that right. I try to say it like Thoreau. Yes, I say it like the author, sorry. Thoreau. And this is Priscilla Benali and Jacqueline Del Garrido. So in this clip that Blaine will start in just a moment, I have asked Priscilla and Jacqueline what was going on in their community that they felt they wanted to apply for a Native Connections grant. And then it'll get quiet there for a moment. Unfortunately, my mic wasn't picking me up. It was picking them up very well. But I asked them if there was special moments that they had encountered in their few years of working with the Native Connections grant, and these were their answers.
It's difficult because in 2010, we had 15 youth suicides in 1 year in our community. And it was difficult because we couldn't even grieve for, oh gosh, I'm getting emotional. We couldn't even grieve for the last child because we had to start planning for another family gathering to plan for, to help with financial donations for the family. So when a young lady, her name is Juliana Coe, came to the chapter, which is one of our gathering places for Native American leadership, and told us that one of her students just committed suicide, and she wanted to do something to help a youth have a safe place or find resources. So that was the start of where the community center started from. And from there, we got our 501 nonprofit status and started looking for grants. And they talked about the Garrett Lee Smith grant. That was one that we kind of started off with, but we had to research it because they told us, well, somebody applied for this grant and we don't know, if you guys want to continue it. So we grabbed it, learned about it, implemented it, and then they told us about the SAMHSA grant. And, that's where we started really working with some grant writers and ourselves and, trying to find I shouldn't say grant writers because we were not grant writers, but people that would help us write the grant, and find, but that was kind of the start of where we needed a safe place for our students and community members or families to find resources. If it's that's a referral, if that's just the sign, looking out for the signs of suicide. So we started later on once we implemented more parenting classes, more um, 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 what's it called, mental health first aid. We started implementing that, and we got an MOU with our school district, and started educating and helping with training our teachers, and then also going to the schools and helping our parents in different trainings, or we would do trainings at our own center also. But I think the first when we got the grant, the first year was all about training ourselves first, because that's what we had to really learn about what we were going to do and what kind of courses we were going to implement.
So if you had to point out maybe one success, I mean, something really tangible that has happened, like 6 or 7 years of this program, is there one that kind of stands out?
Well, that question that was asked earlier when we were doing that group activity, um, I really can't limit it to one because there's been two. And the first one is, for me, this is my personal one, is we see the kids that had these suicidal ideations. They had the ideations, and some have attempted where we have to call 911, but then to see them in the community again, that it was not, they they're still alive, and I think that's one of the successes when we see that our intervention helped, and I also sit on the board of education for our school district. So to see them graduate and walk across the stage and shake my hand, and we both get the lock eyes, and you know we both know where that person was at, and to see them come across the stage to graduate is just so fulfilling. The second one is our youth board. Our youth board once we established and formed a board of directors. We tried to make these plans by ourselves as adults. But once we got the youth, and nobody would come, the kids wouldn't come to any of our events. But once we implemented the youth, and the youth said, "This is what we want to do. This is," so it was a completely different direction than as adults were planning. But then youth started to come, and our youth board started to grow. So we have a youth board that's on our board of directors to plan with us now.
Thank you, Blaine. You could go on to the next slide. So we moved on, as Deborah and Bobby pointed out just a couple weeks ago, if that long. We had our Great Lakes Northern Plains regional site visit. I was fortunate to have been able to attend both of them, both the Southwest and this one. And again, a lot of similar activities. We had a really good group, 17 on-site programs, but certainly more staff, and then 7 virtual programs were in attendance. On our next person, our next guest is actually going to be with us live here, and I can't thank him enough for joining us. Blaine, next slide. With us today is Darren Janice with the Oglala-Sioux Lakota Housing Program. They have just a great program, as do many of you, but they are a little different in that their Native Connections program is being run through their housing authority. So that is somewhat unusual, and Darren was able to give a presentation that talked about the work that they've done, and he shared with us an activity that he has used with folks that kind of speaks to how we can have support and how not having support, whether it's emotional or your family around you, how it can affect us. So, Darren, are you with us there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Hey, Darren, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to just say that Darren joined us with a very short notice, and I can't thank him enough for doing that. So, can you tell us a little bit about your program? I know I've spoken with both you and Lisa about the reason that your program is actually with the Housing Authority. Can you talk to us about that a bit?
Sure. Hamadaki chante washte nape cheyuzapalo. Darren Janice imachiapi. I greet you all, my relatives, with a warm-hearted handshake, first of all. Second of all, I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm not able to be visible today. But yeah, Lisa had started through the housing because, we have so many homes here with people that are in need of assistance, not just, monetary financial assistance, but also with behavioral health, substance abuse, there's a sexual abuse, there's a lot of that goes on within our housing blocks here in the communities on our reservation here on Pine Ridge. So she took it upon herself to write a couple grants that we could maybe implement some of these resources to the membership that are within our housing. So that's how that all got started.
Yeah, so I wanted to, in preparing for this, I had gone back and listened to the podcast that you and Lisa did with us. It's been about 3 years now, believe it or not. Yeah. And I know that you made a very similar point to what Priscilla was making for Theroux about having the youth be part of planning. Can you tell us a little bit about how when you started, they certainly were moving forward with good intentions, but how you were able to bring the youth in to make it a more popular or more attended events in the community?
Sure. Yeah, well, Lisa, she's done a lot of, prevention work here, suicide prevention, substance abuse, but a lot of it was more geared towards cisgender youth here on Pine Ridge. And a lot of the time we were finding out here that a lot of our Two-Spirit LGBTQ community wasn't being involved in a lot of things. And so Lisa had written into the grant where she wanted to start implementing, more resources, more support groups for this selective group, and she was just unable to find that. So she reached out into the community to one of my relatives and had asked me, because I've been openly gay, and I'm an advocate pretty much for a lot of the Two-Spirit and LGBT rights, civil liberties, equity here in South Dakota. And so from there together, you know, we just decided that we needed a place to create a place where it was a brave, a safe, and an inclusive place for all. So it was more geared towards Two-Spirit LGBT, but we also love when we have our allies come in to help and support us. And one of the things we really wanted to work on was identity. We wanted to put in that traditional cultural perspective and build a lot of the youth self-esteem, because a lot of times these kids come in, they're bullied, they're broken, you know. So what we wanted to do was just help them build that extra skin and to just have that brave space where they could come. The name of our program is Naji Nupa Hochoka. The kids helped us name it, and that's the Two-Spirit Circle.
Great, thank you. So I mentioned about the presentation that you made and the activity that you had folks do in the room. So Bobby, I know you were there with us in the Great Lakes, so maybe you could share some of your impressions about that activity. I know we were all talking about it later, and then Darren, you can give us a little bit of detail about how you use this with your community.
Sure.
The activity, going into it not really knowing what to expect and not knowing where it was going to go, but just going into it willingly. My impression, I was so impacted at the end. I was fortunate that, I don't know if Darren's probably going to explain how it goes, but he had passed out stars, 3 different colored stars, and there was a blue, I believe it was yellow and a red. And I had gotten a blue star, and so, you know, I was in my little bubble, my little seat in my little bubble, you know, happy with, because every time it gone through, I was satisfied with what I was hearing. But the person sitting next to me had a red star, and as the activity was going on, I could hear tearing and ripping, and you know, at one point, and I was watching, I was really observant as watching what was happening with it was a female sitting next to me. I was really watching what was happening with her, and I could just feel my heart. I could feel my heart break, and I was feeling very emotional with what I was witnessing, what I was hearing, you know, watching her. And it was interesting, you know, at the beginning, you know, she had tore off a piece of that star, and she ripped it like in little pieces, and she dropped it on the floor. The next star was the same thing. She was like, okay, I noticed the rips were a little bit slower. And then after like the 3rd time she ripped it, and pretty much she just sat there, and she was just holding that piece she ripped off, and she just laid it real gently on her lap. And then, I mean, and after, it was just so impactful to watch what was happening. And I walked away with a whole new outlook and a whole new a whole new person after that activity. It was very good, Darren. It was very good, very impactful.
Thank you, Bobby. So Darren, do you want to share a little bit of detail about what the activity was and the points you make in doing this with folks?
Sure. Thank you, Bobby, for that. I'm tearing up as I hear you speak. That's what I want to hear from the majority of the people that leave after, you know, doing this activity. Initially, I had learned this from Dr. Irene Temple. I took one of her LGBT 101 courses in Rapid City, South Dakota, and she had us do this activity. And what the activity is basically you are the star. And there's 5 points to the star, and you're putting information coming from you that's incredibly important, such as, you know, your family member who would support you through anything, a best friend, your hopes, your dreams. And that's something that we all go through life. You know, it's very impactful when we have that and it's a positive. But when you're forced, like a red star, again, she talked about the 3 different color stars. There were blue, there were yellow, and there were red. The blue is the star that everybody supports you. You have the majority of support from everybody. The yellow kind of can go both ways, but they're kind of iffy. But in the end, everything's going to be okay. With the red stars, the red star is the star that you just lose everything. And the thing is you're putting people in other people's moccasins, so to say, like the old cliche. And you're able to this activity actually makes you feel the impact of losing somebody because of the fact that you are within the two-spirit LGBT spectrum, and you're actually able to feel how hurtful it is. It talks about how 40% of the LGBTQ two-spirit population is lost and they're homeless. Some turn to 60% alcohol and drugs. So you're actually able to see this by you're tearing off each one of these points of the star. And it's one of the most impactful activities that I've ever done. So when you're able to get that red star, you actually feel that. And even if you have a blue star, you're able to compare how much better off you are than somebody who had the red star. And no matter how many times I do it, my heart hurts at the end of it because there's so much truth to it.
Well, you certainly it was certainly an effective activity with our group in the room. So we thank you for joining us and sharing that information. Blaine, let's go on to the next slide, please. So, we're running a little short on time. Our segment's only an hour today, but if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We would really like to know what topics you'd like to see in our next project year, our program years, webinars, our learning communities, work products, whatever might help you. If you would like to enter them here in the chat, you're welcome to, but we encourage you to at least maybe send information to your GTA about what you feel would be helpful. So we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. We have one more National Learning Community for this this program year, and that will be coming up. I apologize, I don't know the date. So if we got a GTA or if one of Deborah or Bobby, if you know the date, please let us know or feel free to put it in the chat. But you'll see that information in the weekly digest that we share with you. So look for that on Wednesday, August 9th. Margaret's put that in the chat box. Thank you so much, Darren. Again, thank you for being able to join us live. We appreciate everything you've shared with us, and wish you luck with your program. Thank you very much, folks. Take care.